These are the headlines we're following at this hour. President Yoon is heading to Indonesia and India for the annual ASEAN and G20 summits amid South Korea's diplomacy push in the region. The president is expected to call for greater international action on North Korea's increased provocations. U.S. intelligence says North Korean leader Kim Jongun May travel to Russia to discuss an arms deal with Russian President Vladimir Putin, possibly within this month. Consumer prices rebounded in August at 3.4% compared to the year before, largely on weather-induced price hikes in agricultural products and rising global oil prices. Good afternoon. President Yoon begins his week-long diplomatic mission in the Indo-Pacific. The president will be attending the annual ASEAN summit in Jakarta and G20 summit in New Delhi. Cooperation on cybersecurity, the global supply chain, and North Korea's increased provocations are expected to top the agenda. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young has the details.
President Yoon embarks on a diplomatic super week, travelling to Indonesia and India to attend key multilateral summits and at least 14 bilateral meetings with other world leaders. Yoon's first stop is Jakarta, where some 27 heads of government and international organisations are convening for the three-day meeting of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. After a dinner with Korean expats on Tuesday, the president will hold a bilateral dialogue with the 10-member bloc the following morning. He will build on the Korea-ASEAN Solidarity Initiative, which he presented last November in Cambodia, as a key part of South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy that strives for freedom, peace and prosperity in the region.
President Yoon will attend the ASEAN-related summit in person for the second straight year. Our intention to pursue the Korean-ASEAN Solidarity Initiative in earnest will be clear, as we announce plans to strengthen cooperation in cyber and maritime security and digital innovation in particular.
Yoon will also attend the ASEAN +3 meeting, joined by Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Chinese Premier Li Qiang. As the rotating chair of the Northeast Asian trio, Yoon plans to address how to jointly fulfill the vision of the East Asian community through cooperation. Then, zooming on security issues on Thursday at the East Asia Summit, the president will ask world leaders for a strong response to North Korea's missile provocations and ongoing nuclear program by curbing its illegal financing schemes such as cryptocurrency stealing. Also, as part of his official visit to Indonesia, Yoon will hold a bilateral summit with his counterpart Joko Widodo at the presidential palace on Friday. A roundtable of major Korean and Indonesian corporate leaders will also take place during his time in Jakarta.
At this event, President Yoon plans to evaluate the achievements of economic cooperation with Indonesia so far and present cooperation plans for the next 50 years, including strengthening supply chains, responding to global agendas, and exchange of future generations.
With his itinerary extending to the G20 conference in New Delhi, Yoon will engage in further summitry on the sidelines of both multilateral meetings, with 14 bilaterals confirmed, including with India, and possibly 6 more, according to the top office. Marking the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations with both Indonesia and India this year, a presidential official said Monday that Seoul sees great potential for synergy in aligning their national interests amid growing geopolitical and ideological tensions in the region. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Before heading to Jakarta, President Yoon said North Korea's evolving missile and nuclear threats are a direct and evident threat toward ASEAN countries. In a written interview with Indonesian newspaper Compass published Tuesday, the president said that a strong response through close cooperation with ASEAN nations is needed to denuclearize North Korea. Noting that peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region directly affects the international community, he said international order is being ignored by current situations, such as the war in Ukraine and threats from North Korea. As for the ASEAN +3, which includes South Korea, China, and Japan, he said the 3 East Asian countries need to put their cooperation back on track. U.S. intelligence says North Korean leader Kim Jongun May travel to Russia to discuss an arms deal with Russian President Vladimir Putin, possibly within this month. Shin Se-byuk reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may travel to Russia to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin this month, as the Kremlin has sought to acquire military equipment for use in the Ukraine war. According to the U.S. National Security Council spokesperson Adrian Watson on Monday, Washington has the information that the North Korean leader expects to visit Russia to discuss an arms deal. The likely venue for the two leaders' meeting is the Far Eastern Federal University in Vladivostok, where the Eastern Economic Forum is scheduled to run from September 10th to 13th. While urging Pyongyang to abide by its public commitments not to sell arms to Russia, Watson noted that Russia had convinced North Korea to sell artillery ammunition to Moscow during Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu's visit to Pyongyang in late July. The U.S. State Department also called for an immediate halt to arms trade between North Korea and Russia, stating that such dealings violate UN Security Council resolutions. The expected visit follows Washington's earlier concerns that the two countries are in the middle of arms negotiations, which are advancing actively. Last week, the U.S. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby, said Kim and Putin had exchanged letters pledging to deepen their cooperation. Pyongyang, however, has denied engaging in arms trade with Moscow. Meanwhile, Russia is discussing holding joint military drills with North Korea and China, comparing the plan to living in peace and harmony with neighbors. This information came from Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu on Monday. Earlier the same day, South Korea's National Intelligence Agency said that Russia formally proposed a joint naval drill with China during Shoigu's visit to North Korea in late July. If it happens, it would be the first time for Pyongyang to participate in drills of this kind. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he's ready to return to the Black Sea grain deal if Western countries meet his demand of lifting export restrictions against Moscow. Lee Seung-jae has more.
After holding talks with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Monday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said he's willing to resume the landmark deal, allowing Ukraine to export grain safely through the Black Sea, only if the West meets Moscow's demands on its own agricultural exports.
I would like to reiterate our principled position. We will be ready to consider the possibility of reanimating the grain deal. I once again told the President about this today, and we will do this as soon as all the agreements on lifting restrictions on the export of Russian agricultural products are fully implemented.
He also stressed that Russia's withdrawal from the Black Sea grain deal did not affect global food markets, adding that there's no physical shortage of food. While Putin acknowledged that there are problems with the fair distribution of the grain, that has nothing to do with the grain deal itself. The Russian president emphasized that if his demands are met, the deal could be back in place within a matter of days. Meanwhile, his Turkish counterpart said Turkey and the UN, which brokered the original grain deal, have again put together a new package of proposals to resolve the issue. And with criticism that Russia's withdrawal from the deal will cause developing nations who rely on the imports of grains to suffer, Putin announced that Russia was close to finalizing an agreement to provide free grain to 6 African countries via Turkey. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The South Korean economy continued to grow at a sluggish pace in the second quarter, up 0.6% compared to the previous quarter. This comes amid a continued decline in country's outbound shipments, but with imports falling greater than exports. Our Park Kwon-woo has the details.
South Korea saw slight economic growth in the second quarter of 2023, despite an overall decrease in exports and imports. Preliminary data revealed by the Bank of Korea on Tuesday showed that real gross domestic product increased 0.6% in the second quarter compared to quarter one. That figure was identical to the bank's forecast in July. Despite export increases for chips and automobiles in the April to June period, total exports fell 0.9% on quarter, while imports were down 3.7%, mainly due to a decrease in shipments of oil and gas. Private consumption, government consumption, and investments all shrank in the second quarter, while investment in facilities, including investment in machinery, was the only category that saw growth. South Korea had seen positive on-quarter growth for 9 consecutive quarters, beginning in the third quarter of 2020. That is until the country slipped into negative growth in the last quarter of 2022. Growth was back in positive territory in quarter 1 of 2023 on the back of a small rise in private consumption. And according to the central bank, South Korea's real gross national income fell 0.7% on quarter in the second quarter, which was mainly attributed to worsened terms of trade. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
Consumer prices rebounded in August at 3.4% compared to the year before. That largely on weather-induced price hikes in agricultural products and rising global oil prices. But officials say this may be a temporary blip. Our An Sung-jin explains.
Amid surging fruit prices due to extreme heat and rain, consumer prices in South Korea in August saw their biggest hike since April. According to Statistics Korea on Tuesday, the Consumer Price Index, a key gauge of inflation, saw a 3.4% increase in August compared to the previous year. That's the largest on-year increase since April. It is also a 1.1 percentage point increase on July's figure, making it the largest on-month increase since September 2000. The rise in food prices has been the biggest contributor to inflation. Agricultural products saw a 5.4% jump compared to the same month last year, due to weather-related factors such as heavy rainfall. This pushed the overall consumer price inflation up by 0.26 percentage points. Fruit prices in particular were up by 13.1% on-year, which was the biggest rise since January 2022.
However, the Consumer Price Index, excluding volatile categories such as food and energy that include petroleum and agricultural products which can rise due to temporary factors, saw the same on-year increase of 3.3%.
She added that the fact that core inflation measured by excluding volatile categories was at the same level as last month indicates that a change in consumer prices in August was due to temporary factors rather than a shift in the overall price trend. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's foreign reserves took a hit in August on the back of a strong U.S. dollar and market stability measures coming into play. According to the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the nation's foreign reserves were $418.3 billion U.S. dollars at the end of August, down $3.5 billion from the previous month, dropping for the first time in 3 months. Last month, the dollar index, a measure of the greenback strength against major global currencies, climbed by 1.5%. As of the end of August, South Korea was the world's 8th largest holder of foreign reserves. China ranked first with a total of $3.2 trillion, up over $11 billion on month. This afternoon, South Korea's Nat'l Assembly will begin a 4-day government questioning session. Both the ruling and opposition parties will grill government officials on political issues, with the government's response to Japan's Fukushima wastewater discharge likely among key topics. There will also be questions regarding the controversial hosting of the World Scout Jamboree and the government's response to the Itaewon crowd crush disaster. On Wednesday, the session will focus on questions regarding diplomacy, inter-Korean relations, and security, while Friday's session will be on education, society, and culture-related issues. Tens of thousands of teachers across the country took to the streets calling for better protection of their rights as they mourn the recent deaths of 4 teachers who allegedly suffered abuse of power. The government and the rival parties vowed to institute change. Our political correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
Teachers in South Korea are grieving, and they're angry. They're grieving for lost fellow teachers, and they're angered by the lack of administrative measures to protect them. On the 49th day since the death of an elementary school teacher at Seoul Seoyi Elementary School, teachers from all over the country gathered in front of the Nat'l Assembly to mourn the young teacher who took her own life in July. They're also mourning 3 others from different schools who also committed suicide in just 4 days since last week. Teachers dressed in black are demanding that the National Assembly change the law to better ensure teachers' rights, saying regular guidance should not be deemed child abuse. The rally came amid strong opposition from the Education Ministry that said while it sympathizes with the teachers, the ministry also respects the rights of students to be educated, adding that the educators should remain at their posts in schools. However, this did not stop the teachers from taking leave from their schools to participate.
I think there must be revisions made to the Child Welfare Act to clear up the blurred lines of what defines child abuse on school grounds, to better protect teachers' rights during educational activities.
President Yoon ordered the government on Monday to take the teachers' complaints seriously and to make every effort to establish their rights and normalize the education sector. The ruling People Power Party said it will make every effort to pass 4 major bills that are aimed at strengthening teachers' rights. While main opposition Democratic Party of Korea said education is the basis of our society and that it is the government's responsibility to make schools a safe environment. Both parties will discuss the bills at an Assembly Standing Committee, and if all goes swiftly, they will be put to a vote at a plenary session as early as September 21st. Kim Jongun May, Arirang News.
Arirang TV's flagship music program, Simply Kpop Contour, won the Global Award at the 2023 Korea Cable TV Awards. At the awards ceremony held on Monday, Simply Kpop Contour was recognized for its contribution to the global K-pop scene by allowing fans from all over the world to interact with their favorite K-pop stars through live video connections each episode. Other cable network productions recognized were Our Blues, which took home the award for Best Drama, and the second season of Brave Detectives for Best Variety Show. The 2023 Korea Cable TV Awards, which first began in 2007, is held annually and awards programs and stars from cable networks.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the Kenyan capital of Nairobi, the first Africa Climate Summit is underway. Organized by the African Union, the 5-day summit, which started on Monday local time, is centered on the theme of green growth and climate finance. It looks to address Africa's increasing exposure to climate change and to influence climate pledges and outcomes. The continent of some 1.3 billion people currently produces only 4% of the world's emissions. But a report from October 2022 says that since the start of that year, at least 4,000 people were killed and 19 million affected by extreme weather events on the continent. Africa also loses some $7 to $15 billion annually to climate change. More than a dozen African leaders are attending the summit, including those from Burundi, Malawi, and Sierra Leone. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and former Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon are also in attendance, alongside US climate envoy John Kerry. Staying in Africa, the leader of a military coup in Gabon last week has been sworn in as the country's transitional president. In a televised ceremony on Monday in the capital of Libreville, General Brice Clotaire Oligui Nguema pledged to bring free, transparent and credible elections. The coup last week overthrew President Ali Bongo, whose family had ruled over Gabon for the past 55 years. It came shortly after the local election commission declared Bongo had won an election that was marred by a lack of transparency and irregularities. Military leaders annulled the election results and placed Bongo under house arrest. A new report says that invasive species cost the global economy at least $423 billion in 2019. Invasive alien mosquito species, black rats, and certain types of plants caused the most damage. According to the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Service report on Monday, while some alien species have been introduced to regions to benefit local people, alien species that become invasive can cause major damage. this including loss of biodiversity, damage to ecosystems, and the extinction of other species. IPBES says that out of 37,000 known alien species introduced around the world by human activities, at least 3,500 are harmful and invasive. The report notes that since 1970, the global economic costs of these species has quadrupled every decade. And finally, American rock singer and songwriter Janis Joplin and English reggae and pop band UB40 have been given stars on London's Camden Music Walk of Fame. The stars were unveiled on Monday as part of a multi-day ceremony, ending with a free music festival on Saturday. The Kinks, Buzzcocks and Billy Bragg also had their stars added to the Walk of Fame. They joined previous honorees, including The Who, David Bowie and Amy Winehouse. Camden's Music Walk of Fame is a play on its Hollywood counterpart. It honors musical artists and creators who are influential, bring about industry breakthroughs, or have not received enough recognition. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Seoul, Incheon, and some of other areas had a tropical night overnight, and a late summer heat wave is here with a heat advisory reissued in many of the south coast regions and inland areas. Afternoon highs are around 30 degrees Celsius under mostly to partly sunny skies today. High humidity is of no help. There could be a passing rain in inland upper areas and coastal regions near Jeollanam-do province. And when it rains, it could pour down, dropping 30 millimeters an hour along with thunder and lightning. After highs in most parts are 2 to 4 degrees higher than seasonal norms, Seoul goes up to 32 degrees Celsius with sunnier skies today. From tomorrow, we can look forward to much brighter conditions with lower humidity, but the late summer heat wave will continue through the weekend with highs staying in the 30s, but at least we can have a taste of autumn in the mornings and evenings. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Back to Monday's teachers' protests. 200,000 people gathered, occupying 8 rows near the Nat'l Assembly. But this is what it looked like, all participants sitting in order, almost making a scene resembling a checkerboard. On site were some 800 riot police officers who are sharing their stories online about how teachers thanked them or got them ice water, with one saying, if all demonstrations could be just like the teachers, which some describe as the textbook manual of rallies. There was no illegal extension of the rally time, no trash left behind, and from the mass protests, no one was charged for any illegal acts. This is where we end today's newscast. Thanks for watching.